Okay, cool. Looks like we're live now.
Yep.
Let me just check to make sure everyone can hear us. For everyone who's on, if you could just confirm that you can hear us in the chat, that would be much appreciated, and then we'll go ahead and get this kicked off.
Okay.
Perfect. Looks like Josh just responded and said that we are live. I'm going to go ahead and give 1 or 2 more minutes for some other folks to jump on, and then we'll kick this off. It looks like, Mitch, we've got about roughly 50 people today. So we've got a nice audience. Okay, I think that's enough. I'm sure some folks will be joining in as we kick things off. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for taking some time to join myself and Mitch Hartjes today. We're very excited to be having this webinar, and it's really centered around a topic that we get questions about quite a bit and definitely can help add value to whether you're a current customer or someone who's evaluating Glew Plus. It'll be a helpful topic to cover. So with that being said, I'm going to quickly just do a review of today's agenda, and then we can go ahead and get this kicked off. Just really quickly, please know that this will be recorded and it'll be sent post-webinar. So if you have to jump midway through, which I hope no one does, don't worry. We'll have this sent out in a link so that you can revisit it. And also, as we go through, if you guys could, anyone on the call who has any questions as we walk through this, if you want to post those directly in the chat, we're going to address anything as they come through. So we'll just pause and address them if it's a question that relates to most people. If it's something hyper specific, we'll go ahead and save about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of this webinar and do a Q&A session together so that we can make sure we address everyone's questions. Today's webinar is going to be focused around customer cohort reporting. So where we're going to start with this conversation is really around inside of Looker and leveraging pivot tables, which is the method in which we use to get to creating cohort type reports. And then we're going to go into specific details around cohort reporting for subscription businesses, cohort reporting out of your e-commerce cart for things like repeat purchase rates and metrics like that. So overall, it'll be a really good webinar. If you're new to using Looker or Glew Plus, it'll definitely give you some good insight into creating some advanced reporting pretty quickly. So with that being said, Mitch Hartjes is our senior BI analyst and developer. He's going to be leading the majority of today's call. And then, as mentioned before, in the tail end of the call, we'll open it up for questions. So Mitch, I'll go ahead and pass it to you.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, like Nick said, I'm the senior BI analyst here at Glew, and am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we can kind of start from the basics here. Nick, are you able to see my screen here?
Yep, you're good to go.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So as Nick mentioned, we are going to be walking through, 1, the pivot functionality within Looker, and then 2, how we can create cohort type reporting based off of that pivot table functionality, which is a really cool feature that Looker has as kind of a native functionality. So super easy to use once you get the hang of kind of how the pivot functionality works. So hopefully by the end of this webinar today, you guys should all have a pretty good idea and starting point for how to do that. So backing up just a little bit, you'll notice that we are in our Shopify Orders Explorer. So meaning that all of these tables here are some sort of transactional order type data that we have kind of pre-joined in our LookML development behind the scenes so that you as a consumer don't have to do any SQL code. And what we are first going to do is create just a very basic pivot table type visual. So for now, what we're going to do is open up our orders table. And just as a refresher, these filter only fields here, we only use when we're doing the time frame comparisons. If you missed our webinar a couple weeks ago, we did a whole webinar series on time frame comparisons, week over week, period over period, etc. So if you have not seen that, definitely reach out to your account manager and they can provide you a recording of that if you want to take a look at how to do that kind of period over period analysis. But anyway, so these are the dimensions. And then down below under standard measures are some pre-built measures that we've dropped in here for you. You also have the ability to create measures based off of these dimensions within this table here. So as kind of just a basic starting point, let's kind of create just a pretty just basic table, not even a pivot table. So let's take, our order channel and let's take the sum of quantities sold. So we're just breaking down our quantity of products sold within our orders, just broken down by channel. And I'm going to go ahead and put an order date filter on here just so that we don't get, a ton of data. And we can just say is in the past 12 months. We'll just look at kind of the last year or so of data. And we'll go ahead and hit run. And now we have our sum of quantity broken down by order channel. So where the pivot functionality comes in is where, if I was a consumer, I would say, okay, I have my sum of quantity broken down by channel, but I also want to see those channels and how they perform, maybe on a month-to-month basis. So what I can do is go over to our order date field and down to our month name or month, or any of these really. Any field that is a dimension has a pivot button. That's this button right here. So if we scroll down, we can go down to month name, hit that pivot data function or button, and we'll go ahead and hit run.
And one of the other things to note with that field that you just pivoted by, Mitch, I guess would be also including that as a filter if needed to reduce the number of overall columns that you have.
Yep.
So maybe we can show that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So now we have broken out by month our channel and sum of quantity. So a pretty easy way to do that. So let's unpivot it and remove month name, and we can pivot by a different field. So we'll do, let's say, day of the week. Same thing, hit pivot, hit run. And now we have our days of the week broken down. So like Nick said, you can also filter that. So let's say maybe that we only want to look at Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because those are our big sale days. So we can hit that filter button next to the pivot button. And we can say is equal to Friday. We'll let this list load real quick, and then we can select all of them. Friday, Saturday. Actually, it'll be faster if I just... Okay, there we go. Saturday and Sunday. Off. Okay, so now we'll hit run. So you do have the ability to filter what you're pivoting the data by as well, which is cool. Cool. So there is our extended weekend type data. You always have the ability to hit totals and row totals. So that way, and once we hit run, you can have, your total Friday quantity sold, and then also, your total quantity sold based off of your order channel here still on the left. So while this is this last piece is loading here, I guess if you have any initial questions just about the pivot functionality that we just kind of reviewed, and any scenarios you would need to use that, please drop it in the chat. And if it's something relevant now, we can approach that, or if not, we can kind of hit that at the end too. Cool. So now you'll see that we now have our row totals. So we have our totals for the channel field, and then we also have at the bottom here our totals for the day field. So definitely a very useful and easy to use functionality. So let's go ahead and close this data tab, and we can now open up the visualization tab and how this is going to display within your report. So we can open up the table field, which allows us to kind of look at this kind of the same way as our data table, but they've added in this functionality. Just as a side note, whenever you're running data, I think it's probably the standard that at least one column does this once you pull in the table. If you don't want that, all you have to do is go into edit and then series. And then for this, it's the sum of quantity that we're doing, and you can just turn off cell visualization, and that'll turn off for you. So a pretty cool visual type that we've added into Looker somewhat recently is what is called a report table. And this is super relevant when it comes to pivots, because it kind of replicates, honestly, a Microsoft Excel pivot table. So from our drop down here in the list of visuals, we can go down to table report. And you'll notice that it kind of has more of a Excel feel to it. You have the ability to highlight. And the good thing with this is that there's also a lot of formatting that you can do. So you can change the table, hit row subtotals. You can, do all sorts of, you can transpose the table if you want. So there's a lot of ways to really format this table so that, you can really replicate something similar to what you would see in Excel or pivots like that. So, and then we also have the table legacy. That's just another visual that kind of is more of your just old school. I think this is the original table visual that Looker had, and then this this new one is something they've added recently. I think with those with the cell visualizations and the ability to kind of look at that, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, cool. So the next thing I wanted to do was to walk through how we would do some period over period analysis or week over week analysis using just the pivot functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the day of the week, and let's take sum of quantity, but let's also pull in another measure. So we can also pull in sum of revenue. Now, for the last 12 months, what we can do is now to see kind of like a week over week analysis of how these channels are doing. What we can do is go back to order date, open that up, and we can pivot by the week. So if I hit that and then hit run, I'm actually going to stop this and do this just for the last 2 months, because that 12 months is a lot of data for it to pull in and split out. So this might run a lot faster. Awesome. Okay. So now we have, in the last 2 months, we have our week over week data that we can compare across our order channels. Now, I was using this channel field just as an example, but you definitely have the ability to have, any other field broken out. Like if we wanted to, break it down by, the device or, the location, this like state or country, etc. You have the ability to do that. I was just using channel as an example, but this is how we would do our week over week. If we wanted to do the same thing as months, we could do that. So unclick week, pivot by month. This is kind of similar to our original example, but now we kind of have a month over month analysis once this finishes running. Cool. So now we have from May up until now broken out. And if we close this and open up the visualization, it's a little more clear to how it breaks out. And you obviously have the ability and to format this table a lot. You can change the column headers so that they are, like much bigger, like etc. So there's a lot of functionality and how they do that, and you can change the colors and all that. So okay, so before I go on to the cohorts, are there any questions that anyone has regarding just kind of any of the pivots, the year over year, month over month stuff we just went over, anything like that? We can give them like 30 seconds, Nick, to see just anything comes through.
Yeah, absolutely. While we wait, I think that pivot functionality, I think just going back to the topic today of reporting with customer cohorts, I think will start to make more sense once we dive into why that pivot functionality is so critical here. I have not gotten any questions yet, Mitch, so I think we're good to proceed, and then I'll interject if anyone has anything that we need to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and jump into cohorts. So I know this is a big one. This is a request that we get a lot from customers. So what we can do is we're going to start with kind of the most basic example that we can think of, and it's really just looking at customers' first order dates and just making a cohort of first purchase customers and their preceding revenue orders, etc. So what we can first do is go into our Shopify customers table and pull in a field called first order date. And we're going to open that up. And for now, we're going to want to just group our cohort by month. But if you really want to do it by week or by year, depending on how much data you're looking at, you can. For this example, we'll go ahead and pull in month. So we're going to pull in first order date month. We are going to take from our orders table. We are now going to look at the number of orders and a sum of revenue. So take a couple metrics, and what we are going to do is go ahead and we're just going to look at the last year of data just so we don't get too bogged down. So we can do the same thing as in the past 12 months. And let's just go ahead and hit run for now, and we can see kind of our initial set of data. Okay, awesome. So for this dummy store we have set up, this is the number of orders and the sum of revenue based off of a customer's first order month. So now what we want to do is pivot from the orders table, the order date. Now what that's going to do is that is going to now let us break out customers who might have placed in September of 2021, but now their data is going to show up for these corresponding months afterwards. So let's go ahead and hit run again. Cool. And you can see we're starting to see some sort of trend here. So we're seeing, the formation of our cohort here. So what we like to do is I like to have our months go where the latest is at the bottom, and then the earliest going to latest left to right, if that makes sense. So how we would read this, let's open up our table visualization. And for now, I'm going to just hide the sum of revenue from the above table just to make this a little easier to read. So you can read this as, okay, in September of 2021, there were 1,168 orders for customers that was their first order month. The next month, that same group of customers who placed that 1168 orders, they placed 37 orders in October. That same group from the beginning in November, they placed 16, so on and so forth. Now what's cool is we have this total, the number of orders at the end. We can take that off if we want, but that gives you, okay, that this group whose first order month was in September of 2021, they've placed a little over 1,300 orders all time. So what we can now do is put some formatting into this. So what we can do is go to Edit, go to Formatting, and we're going to turn on Enable Conditional Formatting. So right now that's throwing it off a little bit. So let's get rid of actually, let's keep the totals, and we'll get rid of the row totals for now. Okay, hit run just to get that out of the way. Now, what we're going to notice is that the formatting is a little, you're going to have a lot of white here because the first number from each month is obviously going to have a much higher number because that's the total number of orders for those new customers. And not all of those customers are going to purchase again in the next month. So what I was thinking here is we can go ahead and make a metric that might be a little more standardized across so you can kind of see how the formatting works a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and hide from visualization the number of orders metric as well. But what we're now going to do is create a table calculation. And yes, the table calculation does work across the pivot. So you'll see in a second. So for now, let's just do a very basic AOV calculation. So we'll do our sum of revenue divided by the number of orders. Those are the two fields that we've brought in here. We can call this AOV. Hit save. And now you'll see how the table calc works split up by the pivot, which is really cool. So if I go ahead and close this and open up the visualization, now you can see how the formatting works now that the numbers are a little closer rather than a couple thousand versus 10. So you can see, for the first order month of September of 2021, looks like April of 2022 was a big AOV month. So they had a good number of high purchases or high revenue purchases, which is cool. Let's see. Nick, was there anything that we had discussed in our kind of pre-meeting before this about hitting on the cohort creation?
I don't think so. I mean, outside of just understanding kind of what you can extract from this, I think it's valuable to know, basically to have the ability to build these cohort type visuals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you mentioned this, Mitch, but from this point, once you have your foundational cohort, in this case, we're looking at certain customer cohorts or months of customers and how their AOV changes over time as months go on. Just know you do have the ability to continually filter that data and extract other actionable insights from that, whether that be, looking at AOV for a group of customers who purchases one specific product or purchases through a specific channel or source or location. So really, once you have the foundation down, you can then begin to really tailor this for the specific initiative that you're trying to analyze.
Yeah, great point. So something I forgot to mention is that when you do create this, you're going to want to make sure if you are doing this first order month and order month kind of analysis, that you're going to want to have them both probably the same date range selected. Now you can have different date range, but sometimes, if you have more than 12 months, the graph gets, or the visual gets pretty big and hard to kind of comprehend. So, but yeah, like Nick was saying, there's a lot of ways to filter even this cohort after we do this. If we wanted to look at, our order source, we can, select a few here. So for example, let's see one that pops up. And I'm honestly not even sure what order sources this demo store has. So this might be a futile effort, but yeah, I'm not even sure which one is for this one. But you guys get the point where you can select different fields for, whatever filters you want. If you wanted to scroll down to our order items table and, find your product name, you can, take a look at customers that purchased a product from their first order month and kind of how those customers behave after just purchasing that one singular product, if that's something that is important to your business. So you have the ability to really filter this by any field that's available here on the left-hand side in the list of tables. So pretty endless amount of, different kinds of insights that you can get here. A couple examples I wanted to show you guys before we open this up to questions is just kind of showing the ability to do, other types of metrics. For example, this is a subscription retention rate. So if we open up our data, you can see kind of how it's similar. We selected subscription month, but then we selected to pivot by cancellation month. And we took a look at our number of absolute subscribers and number of cancellations and just did a table calculation to get that percentage. And that's brought in there. So that's a pretty cool way to look at retention. As well as we have one other example here that we have built for LTV. So same thing. What we've done is taken that same first order month. This says period. That really just equals the first month after the purchase. So that would be, just think of that as the same, like January, February, March, April, May, etc. So we just created the LTV calculation using the table calc here, using our orders and revenue and number of customers metric there. So a couple good examples of just different ways to look at cohorts. If you're new to this, definitely just, messing with the pivot functionality and kind of really getting a good handle on how that works. And then, once you're able to kind of grasp that, figuring out, the formatting here and how that can, affect the data that's showing, and being able to add these table calculations within the pivoting is really important too when, you're wanting to look at more advanced metrics like retention rate rather than just, sum of orders. So, Nick, unless you can think of anything else, I think that just about does it for the demo here. Should we go ahead and open this up to questions?
Yeah, I think that's great. We're about 30 minutes in, so that's right on time. As Mitch noted, we can open it for any questions. The great news is that we have a Looker expert here and we have Looker open as well. So if there's something that we need to chat through, we can definitely do that. So I'll give you guys some time if there's any questions.
Cool. And while people are typing that, something I did forget to mention is if you do want to sort this different ways, so just clicking once sorts this, but if you want to sort two ways, you can make sure this one is going the way you want, and then you hit shift click, and it'll keep your your y-axis there the same, but changing the x-axis there. So if you shift and then click, it allows you to kind of double sort, so you can kind of get the cohort to look, the direction that you want there.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And Mitch, I don't know if we're able to show that with this, share a different visual with this specific cohort. But the other thing is, clients view cohort data differently from time to time. This is, what we're showing now is cohort data as well as a cohort type of visualization. You can still basically pull together your cohort data and visualize that by way of like a spaghetti line chart or some other visual. Yeah. So I think, that's just one thing to note, is that depending on what you're trying to analyze, there may be different metrics with this core data that you want to visualize.
Yeah, great point. So we can create the cohort down here within the data, but you do have other visualizations that, some of them look pretty messy, like if we were to do, that, but, you can get some good insights here by having grouped bars, or, like Nick said, the, spaghetti lines. That's a little much, but if you had, maybe a little less data, you could get some pretty cool insights from that as well. So,
yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Nick, were there any questions that popped up in the chat while we were talking?
I haven't seen any questions come through yet. Hopefully that's a good thing and that everything made sense. And, if we end this webinar and you're not wanting to post something in the chat, but you have a question, feel free to reach out to your account manager if you have one, or just reach directly out to support@glew.io, and we'll be happy to address that one-on-one with you guys. So we'll give it a couple more minutes to see if any questions start coming through. And if not, Mitch, I think we can wrap this up. And then again, we'll get this recording out to you guys post-webinar.
Awesome.
Just want to give it a little more time in case someone's typing anything. All right. Okay. Cool. Mitch, thank you for walking us through some cohort reporting and the pivot table functions. Just for the total audience here, we've got a lot of other exciting webinars coming up around specific topics that may benefit you. So we'll definitely keep in touch through our marketing channels around the different topics coming up. We would love to see you guys all join again. And if there is a topic that, you guys are really keen to learn more about or to see how Glew adds value in that department, feel free to reach out. We take all of those into consideration and can definitely do so. So appreciate everyone's time. Hopefully this was helpful for you all. And hopefully we see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. All right. Nick, am I okay to end this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.